let's go through the papers, whether you're watching us on TV or listening on the radio. We'll talk you through them all with the journalist and author Ella Whelan and political commentator Andre Walker. Good morning.
Morning.
Let's kick off, Andre, with the Observer, should we? And looking at Margaret Thatcher.
So, obviously, I love Margaret Thatcher, right?
There's a surprise.
I got invited to, do you know the small funeral in Westminster Hall for Margaret Thatcher?
No, I was at the big one. What?
No.
There was a
There was a small one. Oh, there was a small one for friends and family.
Is that right?
Yeah, there was.
The big one was at St Paul's, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
that's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. Anyway, so I love a bit of Margaret Thatcher. Chris Patten, Norman Lamont and Malcolm Rifkin have all said that Liz Truss's plans over tax are something that Margaret Thatcher wouldn't support. Now, I've got to be honest with you, if you look at the way that Boris has been tipped out of the leadership of the Conservative Party and the way Thatcher was, the reality is it's for being insufficiently pro-European in both of these cases, I believe. That's why the backbench...
Really? Why?
Well, first of all, Margaret Thatcher was against shadowing the Deutschmark and the eventual entry to the ERM. That's why John Major became Prime Minister. And Boris Johnson, in reality, has always been hated by a significant percentage of the Conservative Party. I don't believe he got kicked out just over the gaffes, though I believe that was the trigger. I think it's the fact that he is somebody who's been solid on Brexit. Conservative MPs all go on about how much they like Margaret Thatcher. In reality, what they really want is Ted Heath to be popular in the country. Somebody like that, somebody middle of the road, boring, paternalistic, safe. That's what they really want. Anyway.
Well, that won't win them a general election, will it?
Well, quite right. But to return to Liz Truss is promising tax cuts, something that I genuinely believe Margaret Thatcher would have been hugely supportive of. She'd have said, obviously, that we shouldn't be borrowing to pay for it. We should be cutting public spending. But nonetheless, I don't think... Look, I'd give Norman Lamont a bit of credit, but then again, he was partly responsible for the ERM fiasco. But as far as Chris Patten and Malcolm Rifkin go, they hated her. They hate Boris.
They always did.
Right, let's just be honest about that.
But this won't help Liz Truss, though, will it?
Well, I'm not sure if for most Conservative members, if Malcolm Rifkin and Chris Patten have a go at you, you're probably safe.
Maybe it puts you up,
It tells you something about the sort of dearth of talent within the Conservative Party at the moment. If you have Liz Truss, who's basically trying to rehabilitate, I know she says she's not with the kind of pussy bows and the way that she's dressing, but she is trying to rehabilitate the ghost of Thatcher. And you've got Sunak doing sort of, you could argue, a similar thing, sort of with a sort of Blairite thing, and never mind Keir Starmer. But there is, we're facing unique crises in this country and very challenging times, and there are no new ideas. Everybody's trying to cosplay as someone from the past.
But Peter Lilly points out in one of the newspapers, which I think is reasonable, he said, look, at least both of them are trying to talk about a former Conservative Prime Minister. David Cameron said he was the heir to Blair, who's the Labour Prime Minister. So, for most Conservatives, I think that is at least a step forward.
And Blair himself said, or he never actually said it, but they said it of him, that he was Thatcher-lite.
Although, to be fair, I mean, he was more redistributive than any former Labour Prime Minister. And the support for the trade unions, though it was unofficial, the huge amounts of money he put into the trade unions, he was actually much more of a socialist than people made out.
Yeah, they all hate him now, though, don't they?
In the Observer, seeing the Observer, Ella, looking at concerns over what could happen to children over the summer break.
But this is a really remarkable, I'm just sort of surprised, but I think it's a really remarkable story that the Met Police are, for the first time ever, they've never done anything like this, writing to families who have school-age children to warn them about the risks of radicalisation over the summer weeks, which, my jaw hit the floor as well. The Met says that there is a risk, with kids being away from school and being online more, that there is a risk of radicalisation. They don't go into specifics as to which kids, which type of radicalisation, what kind of content they're talking about. But they essentially encourage parents to report their own kids to the Prevent programme. And it's just, I just think this is a completely wild story and an overreach from the Met Police into people's private lives. Because we know that problems with radicalisation are not just from kids spending the summer months looking at, going online and spending too much time on the internet. There are specific things, particularly in relation to Islamist radicalisation, there are specific scenarios in which that happens, and simply blanket sending out a message to parents, You know, a police officer sending a letter to your home is not a non-serious matter. That's a serious thing.
Yeah.
I think most people would find that a real intrusion.
However, in defence of this, and I think it is ridiculous, and I want to say something just very quickly about extremism. Look, the reality is the vast majority of people who are radicalised in any way, whether that be the far right, whether that be the far left, whether that be Islamism, are people who are disgruntled because of a wider societal problem. And we have locked up the young people of this country for the thick end of 2 years. And they've been denied schooling, they've been denied their GCSEs. I was going for a walk the other day during the lockdown, and there was a railway arch near my house where a group of teenagers were hosting some sort of an illegal party. Right? Very, very tame, just a bit of music. And I thought to myself, how cruel is it when the ultimate punishment for a 14-year-old is to be grounded for the weekend, to lock them up for 2 months or whatever it was. And I genuinely think that this is the fault of society if young people are radicalised in whatever way, because I believe the radicalisation is just the outlet for the anger.
Well, you're never backwards in coming forwards, Andre, for which we thank you and Ella for joining us. So it's a bit tight this morning.
No problem.
But thank you very much indeed. You got a good run out in the 6 o'clock hour, though.
Yeah, you did, absolutely.
It all balances out in the end.
And thank you to all our viewers for getting in touch too. Jim says all these comments about travel chaos being due to Brexit are just an example of how Remainers won't accept the result. The ports had these problems before Brexit, and most of the chaos is lack of staff after COVID.
Les has got a good idea. Morning, Les. So instead of sitting in cars for 5 hours, they should visit our wonderful Kent pubs and enjoy themselves in the Kentish Riviera sun.
Oh, is that what it's like at the moment? That sounds nice. Gillian says my son and his family, 6-year-old twins, spent 8 hours queuing yesterday to board the shuttle. Shame on the French. When you consider the amount of revenue all those tourists are going to plough into the French coffers, it makes my blood boil.
Oh, there you go. We'll keep your thoughts coming through. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Now,